Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Welcome. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. There are more calls within the Liberal Party for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to step down. Political reporter Brian Lilly will have the latest. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith was in Lethbridge, saying her party's willing to take the Trudeau Liberals to court once again over Bill C-69. And important tips from Alert's Internet Child Exploitation Unit about how you can best protect your children from being targeted by online predators.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Liberal cabinet ministers say they stand behind Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just a day before he faces calls from a number of MPs to step down at the Liberal caucus. Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon says he has full confidence in Trudeau's leadership. Health Minister Mark Holland pretty much said the same thing.
These are not easy times to lead. I don't know anybody who's having an easy time anywhere leading. But the Prime Minister has my full confidence and the full confidence of most of my colleagues. And I think, it's an easy time to kind of, believe there are magic solutions. And Canadians are going to go through the same kind of thing, I think, whenever the next election comes. You can listen that, that a slogan, just the slogan can fix all of your problems. That's all you need is a magic wand. And that doesn't exist.
Some other Liberal MPs are calling for Trudeau to step down on Wednesday. Prince Edward Island MP Sean Casey says he signed a letter calling for Trudeau to resign. Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly says even with some unrest within the Liberal Party, it may not be enough to have Trudeau replaced as leader.
These guys have not been well organized in doing this. Unlike Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien, Martin's people actually went before the cameras, Hal. They went to people like you and I and said, hey, I think this guy has to go. This is my face. This is my name. Here's why he has to go. They're not doing that. It's all very quiet behind the scenes. It's actually why you've got someone like me, who's a pretty staunch critic of the Prime Minister, coming out and defending him in a way and saying these guys have to put up or shut up.
Mr. Lilly will have more on Trudeau's leadership, along with how the PM said those who leaked classified information to the media on foreign interference are criminals. He'll have details coming up later in our program. Premier Danielle Smith visited Lethbridge to campaign for UCP Lethbridge West nominee John Middleton Hope. Now, the two of them, alongside Affordability and Utilities Minister Nathan Neudorf, began door-knocking in our city on Monday to drum up support for Middleton Hope ahead of the soon-to-be-called by-election. Premier Smith says that she's waiting on Naheed Nenshi to run for a seat for himself before calling multiple by-elections.
I had thought that by now, he's been elected since June. I kind of thought one of his caucus members would step down for him. And in the interest of taxpayers, it would be nice to have both of those by-elections at the same time. And so he has a few more weeks to see if one of his candidates, one of his MLAs will step up and make way for him so that he can be in the legislature. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll call the by-election. It's a lot easier to have two by-elections at once rather than do this one and then in a couple of months do another one. And so if he wants to get into the legislature, now's the time to do it. He's got 14 MLAs in Calgary. He's got 20 MLAs in Edmonton. Surely one of them should be willing to step aside to make room for him. We're just so delighted to have someone with John's experience. We of course know that law and order and public safety is an increasing concern for people. To have somebody who has that on-the-ground experience of having run a police force is going to give a lot of insight into our decision-making at the caucus table.
Now, in response, NDP leader Naheed Nenshi had this to say: when the opportunity presents itself, I will jump in, but I'm not going to bribe an MLA to step aside from what is their life stream to serve as a member of the legislature just so I can get a seat and be in question period. If Danielle wants to create a vacancy for me in Calgary, I'd be thrilled. Premier Smith was also asked about her continued fight against Bill C-69, which would put an emissions cap on oil and gas production here in Alberta. Now, that is something she's not in favor of. She said her government will continue to try to work toward a solution. Otherwise, they'll see the Trudeau government back in court.
We sent a letter to Justin Trudeau once again saying that the revisions that they made were cosmetic. And in bad faith, quite frankly, the Supreme Court told them that they cannot be legislating in provincial area of jurisdictions. And they thought by changing a couple of words that we wouldn't notice, that they hadn't changed it at all. So we did the work, we went through, we've given them draft amendments, and we've said, change it, otherwise we'll see you in court again, because it certainly isn't living up to what the court told them to do. Once again, they want to continue to bring through regulations that will damage our industry. We know that an emissions cap is actually a production cap, and we're just not going to stand for it. So I wish that they would collaborate with us, because the entire country benefits when Alberta does well.
The full interview with Premier Daniel Smith, Minister Nathan Neudorf, and UCP Lethbridge West candidate John Middleton Hope is available on our website at bridgecitynews.ca, or you can also check it out on the BCN YouTube page. Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver is also in Lethbridge, announcing that the province is launching the Local Growth and Sustainability Grant, or LGSG. It'll provide $60 million over the next few years for municipalities to meet the growing need in public infrastructure. Now, that includes more money for roads, bridges, and water treatment centres. The grants are meant to relieve some pressure for some of the faster growing and mid-sized communities in our province, including right here in Lethbridge.
The funds will be allocated using a competitive application process, which will be open to communities with populations between 10,000 and 200,000, what is known as the growth component of the grant. Applications for that part of the grant are open today to communities of that size. The grant program also has a sustainability component, and some of this funding will be set aside to assist communities with fewer than 10,000 people if they face an infrastructure challenge leading to pressing health and safety issues for citizens. And it's meant to complement the existing infrastructure funding programs that are already in place, including the local government fiscal framework that is providing over $820 million next year, an increase of 13% from this year.
This includes funding for 4 school projects here in Lethbridge, and expanding services and surgical capacity at the Chinook Regional Hospital, as well as medical training for doctors right at our own university.
Officials say applications for the LGSG are now open and will close on November the 29th. Now, the province also announced that plans for a cardiac catheterization lab at the Chinook Regional Hospital in Lethbridge are advancing. Officials say Alberta Health is now moving the project ahead for the next stage, which will define the project's scope, schedule, budget, and associated impacts. Earlier this year, AHS submitted a needs assessment for cardiac services here in southern Alberta. To date, the Alberta government has approved $2 million to support project planning. Now, in a statement, Health Minister Adriana LaGrange had this to say: residents in southern Alberta should not have to travel for comprehensive cardiac care. Expanding services and building a new cardiac catheterization lab will help residents access services and treatments they need close to home. Well, we received a bit of snow, as you saw earlier here in southwestern Alberta, but things are warming up once again. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, much of the white stuff we received is already melted here in Lethbridge?
Yeah, I would say all of it has at this point, but it makes sense considering that our temperature got up to double digits there today. So high of 10 degrees. So we're still in that seasonal range, and it's going to be even warmer on Wednesday, looking at a high of 12 degrees with lots of sunshine. A lot less windy tomorrow as well. So more like up to 50 kilometer per hour wind gusts instead of the 60 Ks that we saw today. That's better, right? I think so. I'll be back later in the show to give you that full 7-day forecast along with a look at the national weather.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Jeanette. There's been a shift in power in New Brunswick. Susan Holt and the Liberals won 31 of 49 seats in Monday's election, clearing the way to form a majority government. The victory signals a shift away from the socially conservative policies of outgoing Premier Blaine Higgs. Political experts also say it opens the door to mending relations between the province and Indigenous people who've been highly critical of the Higgs government. New Brunswick's Premier-designate Susan Holt says it hasn't really sunk in yet that she is in and Higgs is out as leader of the province. She says a big priority for her government will be to open 30 healthcare clinics across New Brunswick over the next 4 years.
We need something that's accessible after hours. People need to have access to care at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And I don't think that that's been built into the model that the current government has been working on. So we've got to make sure that we can make those tweaks and really put this new model of delivery into some of the infrastructure that already exists. We actually do have a fair amount of healthcare professionals in New Brunswick, but they're working under the burden of administration, faxes, paperwork that is impacting their productivity. So this model actually will take our current healthcare professionals and help them focus on patients and not paperwork.
Early voting has begun ahead of next week's Saskatchewan election. residents can cast their ballots until Saturday, then on Election Day Monday. Saskatchewan Party leader Scott Moe has been campaigning in Prince Albert and took some time to cast his vote in his own constituency of Rosthern-Shellbrook. NDP leader Carla Beck, meanwhile, was in Moose Jaw and then attended a Regina Medical Staff Association meeting later in the capital. You know, there's a new boss at the CBC. Heritage Minister Pascal St-Onge announced that Marie-Philippe Bouchard, a TV executive from Quebec, will take over at the national broadcaster. Bouchard's appointment may not come as a surprise to some, as she was part of the committee St-Onge set up last May to consider the future of the CBC. Officials at the CBC say the former president and CEO of TV5 Quebec Canada earned the post following a rigorous, open, and transparent selection process. She'll take over from Catherine Tate. A worker has died on the job at a hydraulic company in Edmonton. Emergency officials say they were called Monday to Jur-Del Hydraulic Services. Occupational Health and Safety says the worker was struck by equipment. It says an investigation into his death continues. Online child sexual exploitation continues to hurt our children. According to Stats Canada, child luring accounted for 77% of online sexual offenses against kids. Since predators never miss an opportunity to find victims, parents and caregivers need to be vigilant and know where to report an incident. Corporal Heather Bangle, who works with Alert's Internet Child Exploitation Unit, discussed the warning signs when it comes to your child being targeted.
Some of the red flags and warning signs when kids are communicating with people online. I mean, I know they've heard this, but don't talk to strangers. Don't accept friend requests from people you don't know. Even if they have mutual friends in common, so many of the kids that are getting sextorted said that, well, I thought it was okay because 2 of my friends are friends with them. Well, that's just because that's the way they operate, right? These people that are perpetrating the sextortion are very good at what they do. So if they start to withdraw or, their behavior changes, ask those questions. You are aware and your children are aware of the dangers online and have these actual conversations about what they could encounter. Report it to the platform. So report the account that the incident happened on, whether it be Snapchat or Instagram.
According to cybertip.ca, data shows that reports of online sexual luring of Canadian kids is up 815% over the past 5 years. The internet has connected us to a global community, and sometimes that could mean that you too could become a victim of cybercrime. Stephen Graham, computer technology instructor at Lethbridge Polytechnic, shares how to recognize those suspicious email messages which can put our computer and personal information into the hands of criminals.
Quite often we'll see that you'll get an email that says, hey, here's an important bank statement, or here's a shipping information from FedEx or Amazon or some other big name company. Yeah, so you click on it and it takes you to a website and you say, well, you have to open this file. So you need to download this app to open this file. And as soon as you download that app and install it, you have invited somebody into your house. Malware's like vampires. They don't get in unless you invite them usually.
Make sure you catch more of this informative interview with computer technology instructor Stephen Graham and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our program. Making energy-efficient home improvements and renewable energy upgrades is the goal of the Clean Energy Improvement Program. Now, it's a new initiative launched by the town of Taber. The Facilities and Energy Manager, Blake Haranek, says the program offers affordable, long-term financing to homeowners. Haranek explains, with this initiative, homeowners can install solar panels, upgrade insulation, and replace windows. He says there are a lot of benefits with this program.
This program allows residents to get low-interest financing through the town in order to complete these energy-efficient upgrades, which allows us to offer our residents a 2% interest rate, hopefully lower their utility bills and their energy usage. The upgrades are tied to the property, and the repayment gets added to the property taxes. Whereas in the case of the Canada Greener Homes Grant, that loan is tied to the person. So if I went out and upgraded all my windows in my house, I would be on the hook for that upgrade, and I would pay that back myself, even if I sold the house. Whereas these upgrades are tied to the home, so when the resident sells the home, the next resident still gets the added benefit of, say, energy efficient windows.
Haranek says the basic requirement to be eligible for this program is to be a residential homeowner who's in good standing with the municipality. At the Joni and Friends Wheel for the World Outreach, a young 8-year-old Robbie received his very first wheelchair. Officials with a Christian organization say the added mobility has also allowed the young boy from the Philippines to learn more about the gospel. We have more now in this report.
Robbie is 8 years old. He has cerebral palsy.
In his situation, he cannot walk, he cannot play, he cannot run outside. Sometimes I can see he's sad. He wants to be like the other children. I can see that my mom is struggling with the situation of carrying him because he's growing, he's getting bigger, so that's why she needs more support.
When I'm carrying him, he cannot control himself to participate or to cooperate with me. Even though he's struggling in his situation, he's always smiling. This is his first time having a wheelchair. We'll use the wheelchair and it will be easy for us to travel without carrying him. He can now travel, he can now go outside and play with the other kids.
I was inspired by those people who give us time to talk about Jesus. I can show you this bracelet that she gave me. This bracelet shows this color. These colors has symbols, which the color black symbolizes the sins. And the second one is the blood of Jesus. The third one is the white one, which symbolizes the removing of our sins. This bracelet gives me strength and faith in God, which I can always remember that no matter what happens in life, God will always be with us. From now on, the wheelchair, I think, will be more convenient for Robbie. He can now go to the therapist without any struggles, without any difficulty in traveling.
I'm really, really grateful to have one of your wheelchair that can help others like my son, Robbie.
I am very thankful, and I don't know how to repay that blessing that you gave us. It gives me more hope that God can give us more blessings.
Thank you very much.
What a great story. Go, Robbie, go. Well, we saw a lot of the snow go here in Lethbridge on Monday as it all melted and warmer temperatures are on the way for our city. Full weather details are on deck. So much of the snow we received on Monday in Lethbridge has already begun to melt. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, is it just me or does it feel far too early for snow?
It is not just you, Hal. Believe me, yeah, I'm not with that notion either. I can't speak for all of our viewers, but I personally would rather not see snow until at least Christmas Eve. So there is no more snow for the foreseeable future. We're seeing mainly clear skies all week and then back up to double digits. So we're seeing high of 12 degrees on Wednesday, 10 on Thursday, down to 8 Friday, but clear skies. And then a beautiful weekend, 16 for Saturday and Sunday, and then back to 10 on Monday. So all of this keeping us in that seasonal range. Average high for this time of year, 11 degrees. So we actually will see a little bit higher temperature tomorrow. -2 is the average low for this time of year. 25 was our record breaker day on this day, a record high happening back in 1999. And in 2020, we saw the record low, which was -14. Okay, so 8:05 is when the sun rose this morning. Sunset this evening, 6:25. We're looking at 10 hours, 20 minutes of daylight, 3 minutes shorter than we saw yesterday. Okay, 12 degrees in Victoria tomorrow. We're looking at a chance of showers in the morning there. 40K winds in the Juan de Fuca Strait. Also a 40% chance of showers in Vancouver, high of 11 there. 8 degrees in both Edmonton and Calgary. We're seeing partly cloudy skies in Edmonton. Should clear up later on in the day. And mainly sunny conditions in Calgary tomorrow. As we look to the rest of the prairies, we're seeing lots of sunshine across Saskatchewan and Manitoba. High of 9 in Saskatoon, 11 in Regina, and high of 10 degrees tomorrow in Winnipeg. As we get to the central portion of the country here, we're still seeing decent temperatures, but remember yesterday when we saw those humidexes still of 26 and 27? Well, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is mainly raining. So we're seeing 40% chance of showers in Toronto tomorrow, high of 22 degrees. We could see some showers, then clearing in Ottawa, 21, 14 for the high in Montreal tomorrow with cloudy and then clearing skies. Okay, so we're seeing a mix of sun and cloud, and then the sunshine. We're also seeing fog dissipating in most of these cities here. Fredericton, high 22 tomorrow. Halifax, high of 21, 20 for the high, and Charlottetown with clear skies as well. And 13 degrees, the expected high tomorrow in St. John's with sunshine as well. So there you have it. That's your forecast.
A push by the federal Labour Minister to reset relations in a Labour standoff at the Port of Montreal has come up empty as a partial strike drags on. Stephen McKinnon says the Maritime Employers Association and the Longshore Workers Union must now find a path toward a negotiated agreement as quickly as possible. He says federal mediators remain on hand to help with the contract talks, where scheduling and wages have proven to be major stumbling blocks. On October the 10th, nearly 1,200 dock workers at the country's second largest port launched an indefinite strike on overtime shifts. That took place a week after they carried out a 3-day strike at 2 container terminals. Many Canadian business leaders are worried as the U.S. election draws near. A new KPMG survey of more than 700 small and medium-sized businesses say 87% fear the Canadian economy could end up being collateral damage from American protectionist policies. Those policies could lead to less favorable trade deals and increased tariffs for Canadian business owners. The survey says 85% of business leaders in Canada are now reviewing their business strategies in preparation for a change in U.S. leadership. A number of younger Canadians are thinking outside of the box when it comes to collectibles. Now that includes Pokemon cards, limited edition shoes, and handbags. Officials at NFP Canada, a wealth management company, say interest in alternative assets is a good way for younger generations to learn more about investing. They say many other Canadians have been collecting hockey and other sports cards for many years, which can now be worth a small fortune. The Canadian Association of Alternative Strategies and Assets says, however, alternative asset investments can be risky, noting the key is to diversify across different markets. Now, here's a look at our markets. The TSX was down 6 points on the day to finish at 24,716. The Dow was down 6 points as well to 42,924. The S&P 500 was down 2 on the day to 5851, and the NASDAQ was up 33 points to 18,573. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.53 to $72.09 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to $2.30 US. Gold was up 29.17 on the day to 27.4861 US an ounce, and silver was up $1.06 to 34.85 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.14 per bushel, barley's at $6.12, canola's at $14.31, and corn is at $7.32 per bushel. Live cattle were down $1.30 to $1.8315. Feeder cattle were up $1.85 to $2.4943, and lean hogs were up 50 cents to $78.25. That's for the December contract. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 72.40 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Alberta Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver was in Lethbridge announcing that the province is launching the Local Growth and Sustainability Grant. It'll provide $60 million over the next few years for municipalities to meet the growing need in public infrastructure. That includes more money for roads, bridges, and water treatment centres. The talk of a coup within the Liberal Party of Canada continues. A number of Liberal MPs want to see Justin Trudeau out as party leader. Sun political columnist Brian Lilly will share details with us momentarily. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews. It appears as though the coup attempts on Parliament Hill continue. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in a cabinet meeting earlier today before he faces his caucus on Wednesday. Now, to chat about this in more detail, outdoors on location in Toronto, is Sun political columnist Brian Lilly. Brian, how serious is this challenge to Trudeau's leadership? Could we see a new Prime Minister here in Canada?
I'm skeptical, but when I talk to Liberals, they say, ooh, take it seriously. Even ones that aren't signing on, even Liberal MPs that say, oh, I've heard about it from my colleagues, but no, I haven't seen the letter, I haven't signed it, I'm not part of the coup. They're still saying, take this seriously. the Prime Minister has taken it seriously enough that it's unclear at this point whether he has postponed a trip to the Commonwealth leaders meeting in Samoa, or if he's just put it off for now. Is he canceling it outright? We'll have to wait and see. But going into cabinet today, first off, he normally walks in the front door. He normally stops and chats with reporters. Didn't do that today. Not sure if he went in the back door somehow or showed up really early to avoid all the media, but no comments from Trudeau heading in. Lots of cabinet ministers, though, stopping to speak and all pledging their undying loyalty to the man at the top. So interesting days in Ottawa, to be sure.
Now, is it being led by Anthony Housefather, the Jewish MP, Liberal MP, who's been outspoken against Trudeau in the past because of Trudeau's not really taking the stance of Israel when it comes to the war in Gaza?
I wouldn't think so. I've known Anthony Housefather since I was in Montreal, and he was on the sidelines of politics there at the local level. That's not really his style. I think we could assume that Sean Casey out of Prince Edward Island has signed on to it, Wayne Long out of New Brunswick, some others, but I wouldn't suspect that Housefather is part of that. We've heard, estimates of 20 names, 30 to 40 in some reports, one online claim of 47 people have signed on. I'd be shocked if they got to 25, quite frankly. And you have to remember, there's more than 150 Liberal MPs in the caucus. And if you only get that many, is it really a successful coup attempt? These guys have not been well organized in doing this. Unlike Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien, Martin's people actually went before the cameras, Hal. They went to people like you and I and said, hey, I think this guy has to go. This is my face. This is my name. Here's why he has to go. They're not doing that. It's all very quiet behind the scenes. It's actually why you've got someone like me, who's a pretty staunch critic of the Prime Minister, coming out and defending him in a way and saying these guys have to put up or shut up.
And Brian, two former chiefs of staff to former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien have come out saying that Trudeau needs to go. And we also interviewed former Liberal MP Dan McTeague on BCN recently, who served under Chrétien as well, saying the same thing, that Trudeau needs to be ousted. Is this a sign that the Liberal old guard believe that Trudeau really needs to be replaced?
Well, look, Dan McTeague has not been close to the Liberal Party in a very long time. I know Dan well from both seeing him socially here in Toronto, but his time in Ottawa, I've known him a long time. He long ago broke ranks with the Liberal Party. A lot of people were asking me, though, about Eddie Goldenberg, one of Jean Chrétien's chiefs of staff, and Senator Percy Down. Is this a way of Chrétien coming out and quietly putting the knife in Trudeau? And I'm told no, that these guys are speaking on their own. They're not normal surrogates for Trudeau. Often politicians will have surrogates go out for them, but I'm told in this case, that's not what's happening. Do I think that Chrétien probably believes Trudeau should go? Well, anyone that can read a poll would think that, but I think Chrétien is going to keep his thoughts to himself on this.
And Brian, there's apparently one candidate waiting in the wings if Trudeau does decide to step down, and it's not Chrystia Freeland or Mark Carney.
Yeah, former British Columbia Premier Christy Clark has come forward and said, yeah, I'm interested. It started with French CBC, Radio-Canada, putting forward their questions to her, and she responded in French. By the way, she's been going to Quebec, to Jonquière up in the north to Quebec to study French for the past several months. And she said that, yes, I'm interested in the job when it becomes open, but that is not going to happen for the foreseeable future. So, she's at least put a marker down. But here's the thing, Hal. You live next to British Columbia. You know BC politics. Christy Clark is not a Justin Trudeau-style liberal. She is a business-style liberal. And the old British Columbia Liberal Party was a coalition of liberals and conservatives to fight the NDP. She was definitely on the federal liberal side of that. I wouldn't question that she's a liberal, but, she is she where Trudeau has taken the federal Liberal Party? Christy Clark would have fit well with a Jean Chrétien government. She would have fit in well with Stephen Harper. They got along very well. They did a lot of great work together. Is she part of this NDP-branded Liberals that Justin Trudeau has created? He has, just like Kathleen Wynne did in Ontario, He has dragged the Liberal Party to the left of the NDP. Would she find a home? I'm not really so sure. I think she'd be a real a competitor for Pierre Poilievre because she's shown that she can govern. She's not crazy. She's not going to wreck the place. But would she find a home in the Liberal Party today? Doubtful.
But at the end of the day, does it even matter who the leader of the Liberal Party would be? I mean, Canadians are so disenfranchised right now, disconnected and just angry at the federal Liberals. Could this be another Kim Campbell scenario where Christy Clark takes over, but in the end, the Liberal Party gets wiped out in the next election?
You know, I think that's the question for anyone that would take over at this moment in time. I think Christy Clark, has the potential to do better than most, definitely better than Chrystia Freeland, better than Mark Carney, who's never been tested, but by the way, said in a recent podcast interview, yes, I'm going to enter electoral politics. But the question that Liberals have to be asking is, and I think this is what Trudeau has been asking himself, and I think it plays into his thought process, who of these names would do better than him right now? Would they do better than him or would they do worse? And there's a good argument to be made that despite how badly he's doing, he's the best of a bad lot at the moment. The Liberals may just have to ride this out and then if things go as we expect, spend several years in opposition rebuilding the party. Trudeau took over a party that Michael Ignatieff had decimated, their worst showing ever after the 2011 campaign. He built it into a movement instead of a political party, and it's a movement centered around him. Very difficult for anyone to take over at this point with all the rule changes, with the cult of personality around him and all of that. So he might be their best shot.
And Brian, we heard from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Foreign Interference Commission. He said that those who leaked classified information to the media were criminals. Now, Brian, didn't we recently find out that Trudeau's own top officials briefed reporters from the Washington Post on claims about Indian foreign interference? What's the difference here?
The difference is domestic politics, and that's it. And that was the entire point of Trudeau's appearance at the Foreign Interference Commission last week. It was about plain politics. And you look at how he treats Indian foreign interference versus China. He wants to be very strong on India, wants to be very weak on China. China helps him get elected, fighting against the government of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. By doing that, he tries to get votes in the Khalistani portion of the Sikh community. It may be a small fraction of the Sikh community, but it generates buzz, it generates interest. These are highly motivated people, and there is some sympathy within the wider Sikh community for pushing back against Modi. Modi does not have a lot of support in the Sikh community. He is a Hindu nationalist, and that's how he runs his government. So, a lot of domestic politics at play with Trudeau doing this. But you're right, he called the people who leaked to the Globe and Global News on China interference, he called them criminals. But what did we find out? Days before, the RCMP held their news conference saying that these Indian diplomats were involved, top officials, his national security and intelligence officer and the head of Global Affairs Canada. They went and they gave a briefing to the Washington Post, and they told them details that were not revealed by the RCMP. And they were told, you can publish this as soon as the RCMP gives their news conference, which is early in the morning on Thanksgiving Day. That is, if they were criminals in releasing information about China being involved in foreign interference, aren't these guys now criminals for releasing information about India?
Now, Brian, still with Trudeau, he went on a very long rant at the inquiry against federal Tory leader Pierre Poilievre, making several attacks against the opposition leader. He must be feeling, some of the heat a little bit after the polls say the Tories are well ahead of the Liberals, close to 20 points?
Yeah, so this was an attempt to try and use an official public inquiry to attack his political rival. It goes to show you that there is nothing Justin Trudeau will not play partisan politics on. So he attacked Poilievre for not getting his security clearance and not reading the report. This has been a Liberal talking point for months, but this was Trudeau's strongest hit against Poilievre on this. And a lot of people looked at it and said, well, kind of makes sense. Why won't he do this? Tom Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, and others who've been around politics a long time say, no, this is a red herring. This is a bad idea. If he gets the report, if he gets the briefing, He can't talk about it and he can't act on it. That's something that Mulcair has said. That's something that Katie Telford, Trudeau's chief of staff, has said. David McGuinty, the Liberal MP that chairs the Committee of Parliamentarians, says if you read this report, you cannot talk about it in public. So why would Poilievre go and get this report? Well, Trudeau says it so he can act. Well, but you can't act on the information because you're not supposed to know it. You're not supposed to do anything about it. Trudeau's line at the commission was, well, you can make up a reason. You can make up a reason and say, well, there was shady business dealings in the past, or this or that happened. Trudeau wants party leaders to lie to the public rather than be open about foreign interference. He wants them to lie to the public. Here's the thing. Pierre Poilievre said, you're lying about this. You're not telling the truth at all. Release the names now. Pierre Poilievre wants all the names released, knowing that there will be Conservatives who are compromised, who are talked about in any detailed report. He says release the names. Justin Trudeau says don't tell the public anything, resist an inquiry, appoint David Johnston to whitewash it, and then if you really have to do something, lie, but don't tell the truth. That tells you everything you need to know about how these two men are handling this very serious and important issue.
Brian, the day after the appearance by CBC CEO Catherine Tate talking about millions of dollars in bonuses for executives after around 600 CBC staff were laid off, the Trudeau government announced a replacement for Catherine Tate. At this point, do we know who it is, and is the timing on purpose?
I think the timing is very much on purpose. Catherine Tate's appearance, where she was asked time and again, will you take a severance package when you leave? It's a 5-year appointment. Why you'd get severance for that, I don't know. You know how long you're in for. You know what you're getting paid. And she's paid about $400,000 a year, plus bonuses, of course, or at-risk pay, performance pay, as she calls it. So she would not answer that. She came across as arrogant, aloof, out of touch. There's a way to defend giving your executives bonuses that are politically unpopular without sounding like you are so out of touch with the average Canadian. But she couldn't do that. So yes, she appeared yesterday. Today they announced a longtime television executive in Quebec. I believe her name is Marie-Philippe Bouchard. She's going to take over. I'm not sure that she's going to do anything to improve the matter at CBC. Several commentators over the past couple of days saying Catherine Tate is the best argument for why CBC needs to be defunded. And by the way, if Pierre Poilievre does get elected and defund CBC, he's promised to leave French CBC alone. He's only going to get rid of English CBC. Two very different beasts, and they don't have as much competition or as many media outlets in French Quebec as we do in English Canada.
Brian, it was 10 years ago that Hamilton Argyle Nathan Cirillo was shot in the back by Zahef Bibo while standing guard unarmed at the National War Memorial in Ottawa. I mean, I covered this story with you. We chatted about it extensively when we worked together at the former Sun News Network in Ottawa. A very sad and surreal moment when Cirillo was killed.
It truly is. And I was Argyle myself in my younger days. And so I stopped by. They've got a little memorial plaque with the cap badge of the regiment out on the periphery of the National War Memorial. And every time I'm in Ottawa now, I stop by. But that day, I had gone out in the morning ahead of a morning news meeting to grab a coffee. And I ran into Conservative MP Mike Lake from up near Edmonton. And we just started chatting. He wanted to bend my ear about a possible initiative he was doing on autism. And because of that, Mike Lake missed the caucus meeting. He didn't get in. He was too late. And I got back to the office and I walked through the door where you and I worked for so many years. And Ray Fillion stands up and says, "Shoot her on the hill." I turned around and left, and I checked the timestamps. Was there before Michael Zahef Bibo, the shooter, was killed by Sergeant-at-Arms Kevin Vickers. But by that time, they were in lockdown. It was a very surreal day. And still thinking back to how tragic that was, that Corporal Cirillo was killed, shot in the back, as you say. There are interviews out there now with the 3 bystanders who tried to help him at the time. But most of the day, we did not know what was going on. I was reporting from an area where they were jamming cell phones and trying to call back in and get new information. And of course, you know what it's like when there's an emergency like that. The half-truths spread just as fast as anything else, and there's a dearth of information. But heart still breaks for him, for the Argyles, for his family.
And I remember that day specifically too when Seth Bibeau stormed Centre Block and Parliament Hill. If he would have gone to the left, it was a caucus meeting with Stephen Harper and the Conservatives. If he would have gone on to the right, it would have been Tom Mulcair and the NDP. Instead, he bolted straight ahead for the library. And that's where you see all the bullet holes, and that's where he was shot and killed. It was just a pretty crazy day and a very sad day at the same time. Sun political columnist Brian Linney, thanks so much for joining us today from Toronto.
Thank you, Hal.
Most of us have a love-hate relationship with our computers, don't we? They, along with the internet, have made it so easy to connect with friends around the world, and at the same time have made it easy for the bad guys to commit cyber crimes. So joining us to chat about this today is Stephen Graham. He is a computer information technology instructor at Lethbridge Polytechnic. Welcome, Stephen. Good to have you with us today.
Good to be here. Thanks, Jeanette.
Awesome. Okay, so Stephen, how bad are things with cybersecurity issues these days? Are we gaining ground against cyber criminals, or are they getting more and more clever? It does seem like they're getting more clever, doesn't it?
It does. It's a cat and mouse game. Every time we get better at securing, they get better at breaking, and
Yeah.
it's an age-old story. Ever since we put locks on the doors to our house, people have figured out where to find the windows.
True, exactly. So what are the most common cyber threat? Is it malware?
So probably the most common threat that we actually see the result from is malware, and that could be something like ransomware or cryptojacking or malicious deletion of files or participating in other kinds of attacks. Denial of service is one that we hear a lot about in the news. A lot of it comes down to how that malware gets there, and often it's either through some kind of phishing attack or some kind of like man in the middle kind of attack.
Right. Can you maybe explain the basics of how a malware attack takes place?
Sure. So malware is really just any software that gets installed on your computer that does something bad. And it can get onto your computer a variety of ways. Usually it requires you, the computer user, to install something. And you can do it intentionally or you can do it unwittingly. Quite often we'll see that you'll get an email that says, hey, here's an important bank statement, or here's a shipping information from FedEx or Amazon or some other big name company. And you've probably had one of those.
I've had tons of those, and they come through text messages on your phone too.
Yeah, so you click on it, and it takes you to a website, and you say, well, you have to open this file. So you need to download this app to open this file. And as soon as you download that app and install it, you have invited somebody into your house. Malware's like vampires. They don't get in unless you invite them, usually.
Yeah, and they don't get out very easily either.
They will not go away. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it almost makes you a little bit suspicious from anything then, because it just seems like every day now there's some sort of an app that we have to download onto our computer. I mean, are most of these safe? Is it mostly the ones that are coming to us that are sort of uninvited, that are unprompted? It just suddenly showed up. Those are the ones we have to be really suspicious of.
We should be pretty suspicious of the ones where somebody says, here's new software, you should install it. You should be suspicious of that. It's sort of like restaurant food. You go to a restaurant, you pick from the menu, you choose what you're going to get. If somebody walks up to you on the street and says, here's some of my food, you should eat it now. Maybe you want to give that a second thought. So when you're working if you work at a company, the company, you'll get an email from HR or from the IT department that says, we're upgrading this. You should go to this site here and install this. Maybe you want to check and make sure it came from your IT department, but then do the thing that you have to do. If you're just at home and you want to play the newest version of a game, go to an app store. Most of the apps on the two big app stores for your phones are fairly well vetted. But if somebody out of the blue emails you and says, oh, you need to install this right away, the alarm bells should go off if you don't recognize who they are, if there's some kind of urgency implied, like you must do it within 12 hours or the world comes to an end, or if they're directly asking for money or information about you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And those alarm bells are really the signs for a phishing attack, where somebody wants something from you, like access to your computer or access to your company, or just more information about you, like your banking or your social insurance number or any of that.
Yeah, your spidey senses should start tingling for sure if that's happening, right?
Right, yes.
Now, Stephen, we all love a good deal, right? And as we browse the internet, we get, of course, bombarded with pop-up ads. And I understand that some of these can be malware. So how can we recognize what malware is opposed to what it isn't? And most importantly, what are the tools that we can use to protect ourselves against it?
So a lot of that pop-up thing, advertising is advertising, and it's don't let your spidey senses work in this case. If it feels kind of sketchy, maybe it is kind of sketchy. Maybe the deal is too good to be true. When you're presented with a link, you'll click on it because you want to see more about the deal on shoes. I'm looking for shoes. That's why that one pops to mind. And I'm looking for a good deal on shoes. And this one pops up, and I click on it, and it says on the ad that it's for such and such. But then I see immediately in my browser that it's some other place. I'm no longer at insert big name shoe company here. I'm at something else, right? So right away, that's a stop doing things kind of moment. So once you start clicking on things, that's where you're giving your computer permission to do the work. So you just kind of need to really take a look at whether what's being presented to you is actually connecting to the right place.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And of course, you mentioned this off the top there with phishing scams. And I understand that these phishing scams are still one of the top problems out there. So can you explain how these work and what we should do to avoid these?
Yeah, so from the purpose of a phishing scam in the big picture is to get information from you, either directly about you so that they can access your personal finances or personal anything, or to get enough information about you that they could impersonate you to someone else and pretend to be you to get someone else to trust them because they trust you. Right. So that's the whole purpose. So the way it usually works is someone will approach you by email or by text and say, I'm so and so, and I really need some information about this, or you need to enter your password on this website because it's being compromised. Really, what they're looking for is, what is your password, so that they can immediately go and change your password, and now they own your account.
Yeah.
And that is super terrible. So one of the strongest ways to combat that currently is using what's called two-factor authentication. And a lot of people don't like it, but it's very secure. So when I go to log in, I go to the site that I know, not to the site that they direct me to. I would go to my Amazon or my Google or my Facebooks or wherever I'm going, and I put in my username and my password, and then it sends my email or my cell phone a code. And then I have to be in physical possession of that other thing to be able to log in. Right. So, unless somebody steals your phone and it does this, you're going to be pretty safe, because without that code, you can't get in.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I love those. You're right. It can be a little bit daunting and annoying, but yeah, I feel more secure when that happens for sure.
So if you do accidentally disclose some personal information about yourself that allows somebody to try and hack your account, you still have the peace of mind where it says, hey, a login attempt happened here. If that happened, maybe you want to check that you're still secure.
Right. Now, every so often, we also hear about another ransomware attack with criminals demanding big bucks. So how do these work, and what can businesses do to prevent these from happening?
So, yeah, ransomware is terrible. It is it gets its name simply from the kidnapping aspect. But these kidnappers aren't going to return your whatever they've stolen, probably. So how it works is once you've let that software into your system, it will begin to encrypt everything. So it locks it all up with a password that's only known to the ransomer, and they will demand outrageous sums of money, or even rageous, I guess, sums of money to unlock and release your data. There is no guarantee that they'll do that. If they've already broken your system, you might not trust them to do that as well. So the first line of defense is education. Don't let people into your network who aren't supposed to be there. Don't open software that you're not supposed to be there. Avoid the malware in the first place. So that's the first line of defense. The second line of defense is keep separated backups. So if you're a business, you should have a backup plan. Talk to your IT provider about making sure that you have a solid IT backup plan where your data are frequently taken off the system and stored separately where they can't be manipulated. So then if you unfortunately fall victim to a ransomware attack, you can say, I guess we just bite that day's worth of data loss, and we restore from the backup, and we carry on as if we're in business.
Yeah. Now, to what degree are business owners investing in cybersecurity to prevent these kinds of attacks? And I mean, we're talking major money here, aren't we?
I imagine so. That's not really my strong suit. I don't know a lot about that business economics side. I know that the larger the business, the very much more money they will spend. In assessing cybersecurity risk, we often talk about footprint. And so the footprint of a larger organization is larger. And so you have more real estate, as it were, to protect more data, more information, and it's more valuable. It's more lucrative for the bad guys, as it were, to come in. So the larger the company, probably the more is spent. A lot of smaller companies maybe don't spend as much attention as they should, maybe simply because, well, I just run a mom and pop shop. Nobody's interested in my data. But maybe they are. If you get 100 mom and pop shops for $1,000 each, that's $100,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So,
exactly.
and when it comes down to your business, how much can you afford to not be in business? How long can you be out of off the market?
It's like
So,
insurance in a sense, isn't it?
absolutely, it is part of business continuity. What do you do if your computer systems go down? Like at all, but certainly at the hands of somebody nefarious, that'd be bad.
Yeah,
Or
definitely.
and even the damage to reputation. If I've been phished, and someone were to then go out and send emails from my email account or from my Facebook account saying, "Hey, I just discovered this great thing." What damage to my reputation does that bring? What damage does that bring to my company or my institution?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen those before with some of our
Yes, we
friends
have.
on online, and it just doesn't sound like them. It seems a little suspicious, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
getting back to businesses, it seems then reasonable for businesses to start hiring more cybersecurity professionals. So how much demand is there now for hiring these tech people to provide this security?
There's a pretty steady but growing demand for this as people become more aware of the risks and it becomes, well, back to the finances of it, the risk that you have to mitigate. It becomes a very good place to be if you're in the IT field. Again, with smaller companies, there's maybe a little bit less of it, but certainly there are IT companies around that will have people on staff that have some cybersecurity training that can help you as a smaller business mitigate that. If you're a larger business, you probably have your own IT department, and somebody on your staff probably should be responsible for cybersecurity.
Yeah. As a member of the public, we all have gone to hotels and used public Wi-Fi, restaurants, hotels, library. How safe is that?
I'm going to go against what most people think, and I'm going to say it's mostly safe. The kind of attack you would get on a public Wi-Fi is typically what's called a man-in-the-middle attack, and that's where you think you're talking to the hotel Wi-Fi, but you're really talking to the criminal in room 308, and the criminal in room 308 has their Wi-Fi set to Marriott or wherever you're staying, and then they're passing it through to the hotel or whatever, and so they can see all the traffic that you're sending. Right? That's what it is, and it's probably not good. Like, I would not want to discuss a lot of I wouldn't do my banking over that. I wouldn't send any corporate messaging over that. But you can subscribe to VPN services, or quite often, if you're in a large organization, your company has a VPN policy. So even if there is somebody in the middle listening, everything is encrypted, so they can't figure out what you're saying.
Wow. Well, Stephen, it looks like we're out of time here, but it's such a big topic. We could have asked, I had so many more questions for you here, but we'll have to have you back on. But we appreciate you coming on today, Stephen.
Thank you so much for having me, and just check your email. Stay safe.
Thank you. Stephen Graham is a computer information technology instructor at Lethbridge Polytechnic. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.